everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. Welcome to New Jersey City University's Talks of Tomorrow webinar series. My name is Tayo Arugula, and I am the administrator for the Office of Adult and Continuing Education. I am joined by my colleagues, Nicole Valencia Flores, Social Media Marketing Manager, Zena Cruces, Student Experience and Engagement Advisor, and it is our pleasure to welcome you all to our webinar, Tariffs, What You Need to Know About Them. This event is proudly presented in partnership with the New Jersey Small Business Development Center at New Jersey City University. Before we commence, just a couple of housekeeping rules. This webinar is being recorded, so please be mindful of your audio and video settings, as well as any personal or sensitive information you share. We request that all microphones are muted during the presentation. There will be an opportunity for Q&A, so please type your questions in the chat and we will answer each of them at that time. You can also use the emoji hand, uh, the hand emoji, and we will call on you at that time to ask your question if you choose to do it that way. We're honored, as I previously mentioned, to be joined by our partners, New Jersey Small Business Development Center at New Jersey City University. Sheila Harris, Regional Director of NJSBDC at NJCU School of Business, and Madeline Thompson, Associate Operations Coordinator. At this time, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Sheila, who will share a few words about the NJSBDC and the valuable support they provide to small businesses across the region. Sheila?
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We're so glad that you carved out time to be a part of this important conversation today. For those of you who are not familiar with our organization, my name is Sheila Harris Adams. I'm the Regional Director here at NJSBDC at NJCU School of Business. We are one of 11 centers that sit throughout the entire state of New Jersey. We support each and every county. So no matter where your business is, where you live, there is a center that is there to support you. If you're not familiar with who SBDC is, we are part of the SBA. And I like to say that we're the boots on the ground. So SBA is responsible for oversight, initiative, the administrative piece of what we all do. But SBDC is the organization that, again, sits right within your community to support your business. So whether you're a fledgling entrepreneur, fire inside, ready to get that business started, we are the organization that can assist you with that. Whether it's business planning, whether it's getting your business registered, from beginning to end, we can help with that. If you're an existing business and you're looking for some additional support, whether it's marketing, whether it is building capacity, whether it's securing capital, whether it's new market entry, we can work with you with that as well. We basically are here to support you when it's all said and done. And we do that by offering workshops, webinars similar to the one that you're sitting at right now, training, educational opportunities, and programming to support your business. So we work in a number of different industries, and we knew that this was a very important conversation to have at this time in the season. And we're very honored that NJCU tapped us on the shoulder and said, let's partner and bring a subject matter expert to the table to have these conversations. So SBDC is here to support you. It costs you absolutely nothing to register with us. We are funded by our tax dollars, yours and mine. So you should tap this resource. We're one of many resources that are available to you. We are here to support you, whether it's just through the one-on-one counseling, which is absolutely at no cost to you, or whether it's through programming, webinars, or educational events. So, the most important thing for you to do is to get registered with us. It takes you a few minutes, get that done. And then the next step is someone from our team will reach out, let you know who your counselor is going to be. Your one-on-one counselor will tap you and say, hey, this is my availability, and the conversation begins. But, before I sign off, what I want to say to you is this. We've helped over 13,000 businesses here in the state of New Jersey. If you're not one of them, the question is why? We have incredible subject matter experts that are here to stand alongside of you in your entrepreneurial journey. You don't have to do this by yourself, but let us join you and help you with whatever support we may be able to provide you with. So with that, you see on the screen, There's a QR code. You can scan that. You can always just simply reach out to us, sbdc@njcu.edu. We're happy to talk to you about what kind of services we provide. But really, your first step is just to get registered and get started. So the last thing I will say is, this is an incredible opportunity to hear from a subject matter expert that you normally may not be able to get to, right? So ask the questions, follow up afterwards, take advantage the opportunity to really clearly understand what is going on. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of talk, a lot of information, but having someone who actually works in this world and understands the ins and outs of what these tariffs mean to you as an individual, as a small business, I think is going to be incredibly powerful today. So take advantage of this event, but the conversation doesn't have to end from there. So with that, thank you all again for joining us. Thank you to our partners for allowing us to stand alongside of you. And, big claps for Martin for sharing his time and expertise with us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sheila, for that wonderful insight into what the SBDC provides. We look forward to you all further engaging with the SBDC as they are a wealth of information to our community. All right, it is my pleasure to introduce you to today's presenter, Martin K. Bear. Martin K. Bear is a customs and international trade lawyer with the law office of Martin K. Bear. He's admitted to practice in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, and before the U.S. District Court for the District of New Jersey and the U.S. Court of International Trade. He received a BA degree from Rutgers University, an MPA degree from Fairleigh Dickinson University, and a JD from Rutgers School of Law. He's also a licensed U.S. Customs broker, one who was actively engaged in the profession for several years. A former U.S. Customs officer, senior inspector, and import specialist, Martin was stationed at land, air, and seaports of entry. While with the U.S. Customs at the Port of New York, Newark, he was also a member of the agency's Export Control Branch. Martin is also a former special agent with the U.S. Department of Defense, assistant prosecutor with the Office of Hudson County, New Jersey prosecutor, and executive with a global FMC licensed ocean transportation intermediary. He was also an international trade consultant with UNS and Co. and taught international trade subjects at Pace University, Institute of Technology, and Baruch College in New York City. He now teaches at New Jersey City University as our import and export agent trainer. Martin is presently of counsel to the Customs and International Trade Law firm of GRVR Attorneys, LLC, Dallas, Texas. Martin speaks regularly before international trade organizations and associations and is indeed excited to share his wealth of information with you today. Martin, please take it away.
Kyle, thank you for the very kind introduction. And I want to thank the Small Business Development Center, in particular, Miss Adams, and I want to thank Maddie Thompson and also the team at NJCU, which includes, of course, Tayo and Gina and Nicole. And ladies and gentlemen, indeed, it's an honor and a pleasure to be able to present to you today. And I'm going to be addressing a topic that's very much in the news and very much understood, and that's tariffs, or otherwise known as taxes. And a lot of people watch the maybe news shows on television, and some of the newscasters do an okay job, but for the most part, they don't. And there's also too many commercials. And you can walk away from a show and say to yourself, I didn't understand the thing that went on, the thing that was being talked about with respect to taxes or tariffs. So today I'm going to provide to you a presentation that's going to address a number of aspects with respect to tariffs. They're basically their historical and their legal background, and we're going to talk about what's going on now, and we're going to talk about what's to be expected after July 8th of this year. Things are going to change again, and you as a consumer or you as a businessman or woman have to be aware of these changes. In fact, they're very profound. We're talking about really the largest tax hikes perhaps in history. And they're not coming by way of income tax, they're coming by way of something known as tariffs. Next slide, please. Yeah. What is a tariff? A lot of people ask that. It's a word that many people are unfamiliar with, and it's simply a tax. It's an import tax. And a lot of people get very confused with what's going on right now, and many people believe that when it comes to tariffs, They're not going to pay tariffs. They've been told that countries like China are going to pay the tariffs. That is, these import duties or taxes on goods that are coming into the United States. Is that true? The answer is no. That would not be allowed by law. Who's ultimately is going to wind up paying these tariffs or import duties? Well, they're going to be paid by importers, basically what's known as an importer of record. That's a person who's bringing items into the United States. If they're worth more than $2,500, that party has to have a customs bond, and that party is going to be responsible for customs duties, fees, and other charges. Now, with respect to the word tariff, interesting word, and where does it come from? It comes from the Arabic word, and it has to do with basically, this is a word that went through several languages before it wound up in our language, which is English. But it started out many years ago with respect to a place that was, again, considered in North Africa. It was a town called Tarifa, and it also went through several languages. It went through the French, it went through Italian, it went through Turkish, and it finally wound up in our language, and it simply means tax. And originally, the tariff described a list, it was an inventory, a list of items that pirates or people would stop boats or ships coming into the Mediterranean, and they would say, listen, if you want to pass, you have to pay us money in order to get by us. So it really became a list of customs duties, is what the word evolved it to. And that's a word that we're using today. You'll hear it on the air all the time, and it's an important word. And it just simply means tax and import duty. Next slide, please. Okay, now there are all kinds of different tariffs. And perhaps the most common type of tariff is one called an ad valorem tariff, and it's based on a percentage of value. When goods come into the United States, one of the things that an importer must do, one of two very important things, is declare the value of the item being brought into the United States. And value is determined like this. It's basically the price paid or payable between buyer and seller. So if you're bringing goods into the United States, importers are put on an honor system, and they've got to declare accurately the value of goods. And once those value of goods are declared, customs may charge duty. Some items have been coming into the United States free of duty, but that's changed lately. The United States has a number of free trade agreements, as a matter of fact, 14 of them. And goods can come into the United States, or they were able to up until recently, free of duty. That is, certain procedures were followed and they came in directly into the United States. So ad valorem, based on a percentage of value of whatever the item happens to be. Key characteristic of this ad valorem is, again, it's based on value. Okay, and values fluctuate. Well, it depends on markets. And again, it's in common use, perhaps the most common type of tariff that's applied to goods coming into the United States. And why does the government use this type of tariff? Well, to regulate imports and also to protect domestic industries. That's the reason, reportedly, for applying tariffs to items. And it also generates revenue. Right now, the government is looking for revenue. President Trump thinks one way of raising revenue is by assessing increased duties or taxes on goods coming into the United States. Later on, I'm going to talk about what that might do to, or what that will do to business and the consumer. There's also another type of tariff which is very common, and that's called the specific tariff. And as the slide indicates, that's a fixed amount per unit. And I have provided an example. It could be, say, $1.22 per kilogram of cheese. That's an example. Now, a lot of times governments like specific tariffs because they don't, again, because prices can fluctuate and the government is always going to know what it's going to get by applying a specific tariff. So again, what importers have to pay attention to are things like weight and quantity. They have to be very careful when they're bringing goods into the United States that they get those uh, factors right. And again, there's another type of tariff that's a combination of ad valorem and specific. That's known as a compound tariff, and that's ad valorem plus again a specific tariff. And then there's something called the tariff rate quota. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what the government does to slow down the number of imports coming into the United States. Once a certain threshold is reached, well, you can still bring in goods, but they're going to cost you a little bit more in terms of money. The government really doesn't want too much more being brought into the country. That's why it's going to assess another tax on the goods that the importer wants to bring in. And with tariff rate quotas, as the screen indicates, after a certain import limit is reached, additional duties are applied to these items than imported. So next tariff, please. Next slide, please. There's also something you may be acquainted with it. It's called an anti-dumping duty. And quite often, these anti-dumping duties can be substantial. For instance, at one time, if you were bringing Chinese-made furniture into the United States, the anti-dumping duties could be as high as 240%, 300%, even 400%. And what is an anti-dumping duty? An anti-dumping duty is a tax. It's imposed on imported goods that are sold at prices lower than their fair market value. What happens is domestic industries here make allegations to the federal government, basically the Department of Commerce, and it says, listen, goods are being brought in at less than fair market value, and this is no good for the American economy. This is no good for manufacturers here. This is no good for our unions. We'd like you to investigate. And if the Department of Commerce investigates, other agencies can be involved. It'll come up with a report, and that report will be sent in, and it may be decided upon that these items that are being brought in at less than fair market value should have an additional duty, a penalty applied to them. And what happens with anti-dumping duties? An order is issued by the Department of Commerce, and Commerce tells U.S. Customs and Border Protection what to do. Customs is basically, in the capacity of anti-dumping duties, a servant, basically told by the Department of Commerce to stop certain goods coming in and apply duties to them, anti-dumping duties, basically a penalty. And Customs will do this. And if an importer wants to challenge an anti-dumping duty, will he go to Customs? The answer is no. He's going to go to the Department of Commerce and ask for something known as a scope ruling, and have Commerce look at the item that's being brought in and make a decision as to whether the order actually touches upon or affects the item being brought into the country. So again, the idea is with an anti-dumping duty, is to make things fair. And with anti-dumping duties, the allegation is that exporters, people sending goods into the United States, are receiving help from private parties. And the help could be in terms of money, or it could be in help of machinery, or molds, or packaging, or any number of other things. They're called an assist or help. And this help is not being declared, and because of that, exporters are basically harming the market here. They're bringing the goods in at less than fair market value. Next slide, please. This another type of duty, and it's a penalty type of duty. I told you what anti-dumping is all about. Countervailing duties are pretty much the same. The U.S. government is looking at goods coming into the United States, usually because of allegations made by domestic industries here. And the domestic industries are saying, hey, these goods are being brought into the country at less than fair market value. Can you help us? Can you do something to protect the industries here, the unions, etc.? And investigations will be launched. And if it's determined that the goods coming into the country have been receiving assists, the government's going to do something about it. Now, who's going to be giving the help? I mentioned anti-dumping duties. That's help that's received from private entities. When you see countervailing, it means that another government is involved. A government overseas is helping companies in that country send goods into the United States more cheaply than they should be sent into the US. And again, what could the government be doing for the exporters, the manufacturing overseas? They could be giving them help. They could be giving them research grants. They could be giving them money, packaging, whatever. And again, this kind of duty is a penalty. And again, countervailing duties like anti-dumping duties are going to be subject to orders of the Department of Commerce. And again, Commerce is telling Customs, listen, these goods are coming in. The importers of record should be told that the goods are going to be subject to countervailing duties. And indeed, when they come in, they are. And countervailing duties can be quite high. In many cases, they can be 100%, 200%, 300%. So if you're a businessman or a businesswoman and you are exporting goods to the United States, you don't want any surprises. And you may not be aware of these anti-dumping and countervailing duties. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a free service that U.S. Customs still provides. It's called a binding ruling. And again, what do men and women involved in business, importers want? They want certainty, or at least a degree that they can get. And by writing to customs and telling customs that you're going to bring goods into the United States that you, your company, or you individually have never brought in before, customs will look at what you're going to bring in the country and going to make determinations with respect to a classification number. And we're talking about the harmonized tariff schedule. It's a big book and it contains 10-digit numbers. And I mentioned that again, when an importer brings things into the United States, he or she must declare accurately and completely the value of the goods being brought in and also the classification number. The classification number is used by the government to determine the rate of duty on an item. And again, some items come free because of these free trade agreements, or at least they will be put back into effect sometime soon, we hope. But again, you don't want any surprises. So find out beforehand, before you bring the goods into the United States, how the government is going to treat your goods. Okay, anti-dumping duties, countervailing duties. And another thing that an importer needs to think about is how are the goods supposed to be marked? And every item that comes into the United States has to be marked with what's known as country of origin. Consumers in the United States are allowed to discriminate against products based on their origin. And an item coming into the United States has to be marked in a legible place and conspicuously with, again, something in English, the English name of the country in which the item was manufactured or produced. And if the item itself can't be marked, the container or box that the items come in has to be marked with the country of origin. And again, this is the number one problem for importers is actually marking. And if you're interested in that, you can go to the customs regulations and it's found 134. Next slide, please. Okay, we have purposes of tariffs. I mentioned before revenue generation and also to protect the industry. At one time, the United States was very concerned with what's known as fledgling industries or industries that were just taking off. And we've had a number of different types of revenues, and we've had different types of acts affecting goods coming into the United States. And there's all kinds of reasons that the government gives for imposing tariffs. And again, it would be for revenue generation, and that's historically significant. When the United States was first founded, we didn't have an income tax. The income tax didn't come about until 1913. And most of the buildings and mostly everything in the United States at one time was built with money collected by U.S. Customs. And perhaps the most important port of all was the Port of New York City. And the Port of Newark, which we're very close to, is part of the Port of New York. And New York has been a big player when it comes to collection of revenue for a long time. As a matter of fact, the Port of Newark right now is the second most important port on the eastern seaboard. The only other port that's more important in the United States is the Port of Los Angeles, Long Beach. And every once in a while, the Port of Newark actually beats Long Beach and Los Angeles. Again, also another reason for tariffs is to protect these domestic industries. Let them get going first, okay? And this was a big deal in the beginning of this country. We did some manufacturing here of iron, and then the iron sometimes was exported, but we didn't want competition from Great Britain and other companies and other countries with respect to our fledgling industries. And then quite often tariffs are imposed because there's retaliation. We have trade disputes, and you look at the news, you know what's going on in terms of trade disputes. We have them. We have President Trump right now has, a couple of months ago, he decided that there was going to be a Liberation Day and he imposed tariffs, on different countries, and that there are some worldwide tariffs as well. And some countries have said, you know what, if you're going to do this, we're going to retaliate. And then the U.S. response is, oh yeah, we'll retaliate again. So again, there's a lot going on with tariffs right now, and tariffs can influence. I mentioned that we have a lot of free trade agreements. We have 14 of them with many, many countries in the world. And why do we have these free trade agreements and what do they mean? The free trade agreements basically allow countries that are, well, developing to export their goods to the United States, and those goods will be received here basically free of duty. That is, if certain procedures are followed and the goods come into the United States, directly. And again, the United States can influence the actions of many countries, and it does so through something known as tariffs. There's also, we have certain acts of Congress. We have something known as a generalized system of preferences, and that allows poor countries to export goods to the United States, again, free of duty. And we have something known as lesser developed countries, which are truly poor countries, and they can send goods to the United States free of duty if certain processes are followed. And the United States can send goods to those countries free of duty as well. Now, a lot of stuff is up in the air right now because of these new tariffs that have been imposed by the Trump administration, and we're going to talk about that. And the other purpose of tariff, I just talked about anti-dumping and countervailing duties. That's to level the playing field. You've heard that goods come into the United States sometimes at less than fair market value. That's true. And sometimes that's not true. I mean, domestic industries quite often make allegations that things are coming in at less than fair market value. May be true, may not be true. But in any event, you have these anti-dumping and countervailing duties imposed, and it can cost employers everything. The profit margins on a lot of goods coming into the United States are not great, particularly with respect to food. And if you get hit with something like 100% tariff, well, there may go your business. So very important to pay attention to tariffs. Where do you go for information about tariffs? You can go to the website of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which is www.cbp.gov. But at the end of this presentation, I'm going to tell you about other websites to go to and publications that you can consult. And again, think about getting a binding ruling from the United States Customs and Border Protection. And that will basically safeguard you. You'll know what's going to happen if you import certain goods into the US. Next slide, please. Okay, export tariffs, duties. Where does this come from? I mean, why do we have duties? I've told you a little bit about it, but um, again, when it comes to importing, we have all kinds of duties. When it comes to exporting, the story's a little different. The United States is one of those countries that do not allow export duties. You can't tax goods that are leaving the country. Some states have tried this, and at the time of the founding of the United States, the US Congress decided to put its foot down with respect to export duties, and they're prohibited by the United States Constitution. And where you're going to find this prohibition? It's going to be found in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5. And that prohibits Congress from imposing any tax or duty on goods exported from any state. Okay, and this cause was primarily introduced to protect the interests of southern states who feared northern states. Again, the North wanted to do certain things that didn't jibe with certain notions of the South. And again, it's been in place. It was challenged about well, I think of last time it was challenged was about 15 years ago. A state was looking to increase its revenue, and many of the states right now are having difficulty raising revenue. So it decided to apply an export duty to a certain item leaving the United States. Well, the matter wound up in court, and the judge looked at the state's attorneys and just said, "Get out of here. You should read your constitution. We do not have export taxes or export duties." Next slide, please. Okay, brief history of U.S. tariffs. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but a lot of people don't realize how long tariffs have been around. They've been around from the beginning of this country. As I mentioned before, we had an income tax. This was what the United States government relied upon, and it was collected by U.S. Customs. Now, U.S. Customs and Border Protection is changing. When I began years ago with U.S. Customs, I primarily thought of myself as a tax collector. And that's what the officers were mainly thinking of when it came to goods being imported into the US. Now customs is sort of evolving. It's going in another direction. It's becoming more police-like, more law enforcement. And indeed, customs has a lot to do. Matter of fact, not only do the customs officers have to enforce the regulations of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, but customs enforces the regulations of 47 other agencies. So it's an agency that has quite a lot to do besides collect revenues. And I want to mention the Tariff Act of 1789. If you look to the right, you're going to see that, or maybe you can see the icon. And the Tariff Act of 1789 was the first major piece of legislation passed by the newly formed U.S. Congress, and it was signed into law by, of all people, President George Washington, and it was signed into effect on, well, July 4th is coming up, but it was July 4th, 1789, and it established a system of tariffs or taxes on imported goods, primarily to generate revenue for the new country and to protect these nascent or fledgling American companies or industries. And this act, along with the Collection Act of 1789, laid the foundation for U.S. trade policy and revenue generation. So it's been around for quite a while. New country needed to get money right away, and so it came up with customs. Another thing, factoid, believe it or not, the U.S. Coast Guard was part of U.S. Customs at one time, and U.S. Coast Guard or Cutters Service used to go after pirates, people trying to smuggle goods into the United States. And if you look at the Coast Guard flag and you look at the Customs flag, they're practically identical. And there's a reason for that. And just realize too that most Coast Guard officers, Coast Guardsmen, are customs officers, about 90% of them. And they do a lot of interception of narcotics coming into the United States, not so much when it comes to revenue, but they do a lot of the same things that customs does. Now, there's also another tariff act that you probably heard about. It's called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, and that came about in 1930. Officially, the act is known as the United States Tariff Act of 1930. And it was a law passed by the US Congress, and it significantly reduced tariffs, as you may recall, on all kinds of goods coming into the United States. And again, it caused a lot of trouble. Historians say it's largely responsible for making the Great Depression a lot worse. Goods were taxed heavily, and the idea was to keep goods out, not coming into the United States. They wanted to exclude all kinds of goods, and it's widely considered to have basically worsened the depression by triggering all kinds of retaliatory tariffs. Other countries said, "Oh yeah, you're going to do this to us, we're going to do the same thing to you." And what we had was a worldwide depression. There's also another act that you might be interested in, and again, it's still right at the screen, and that's the Reciprocal Trade Act, and that came about in 1934, and it was renewed again a couple of years later in 1939. And that was a U.S. law that empowered the president to negotiate what's known as bilateral trade agreements. And basically, the idea was to reduce tariffs, not increase tariffs, but reduce them. And this act marked a shift away from the protectionist Smoot-Hawley Act. And it's something that a lot of you may want to take a look at. Again, the emphasis was on a reduction of tariffs, not like today, the increase of tariffs. And there's another trade act that you should know about, the Trade Act of 1974. And this is a U.S. law that focused on expanding international trade, reducing trade barriers, and addressing unfair trade practices. And it granted the president the authority to negotiate trade agreements. And it also established mechanisms dealing with unfair foreign trade practices, etc. In 2018, the Trump administration imposed tariffs on all kinds of goods, a wide variety of goods, and most notably on steel and aluminum products coming into the United States. And it basically initiated a trade war, and a trade war is with China, the People's Republic of China. And we've had this, it's been going on for quite a while. It started even under the Biden administration. The United States feels terribly threatened by China right now. And again, the Trump administration, Biden administration imposed, well, Trump did, imposed tariffs of 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum. And they were applied to most countries. There's also 2025 tariffs by Trump, and I'm going to expand upon that later on. And when President Trump reached his second presidency, he decided he wanted to do a little bit more about goods coming into the United States. He was going to raise tariffs. And in fact, the average tariff rate at that time was 2.5%, and it was raised to 27%. Now that's a huge tax increase, and a lot of people are not aware of, how big these tariffs are, how formidable they are. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going to happen on July 8th. We had something called Liberation Day, and on July 8th, the American public businesses are going to find out about what the president is going to propose. Now, with Liberation Day, some of you may recall that happened on April 2nd of 2025, and that's the day that Trump announced Liberation Day, and he began to talk about tariffs. and they began to talk about the implementation of no more tariffs. One of them is a 10% baseline tariff, and that's again, he's talking about higher reciprocal tariffs for goods coming into the United States. And then, if you're interested in the timeline, on April 5th, April 5th, the 10% baseline tariff went into effect. And then again, President Trump talked about reciprocal tariffs on April 9th. And I can go on about this, but what you need to remember is that on July 8th of this year, the president is going to talk about reciprocal tariffs. Again, there's a 90-day pause, as you may recall. So we're going to find out what exactly is going on July 8th. All right, next slide, please. Yeah. There's a constitutional basis, and we have Trump exercising the imposition of tariffs on goods coming into the United States.
Sí,
But
no, pero digo que ojalá pues, ya me
yeah, but who actually has the power, and where is it written in the Constitution that a certain entity, a certain party, or a certain branch of government has rights to impose tariffs? That's the Congress. It's actually, you can find it in Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, and it outlines the powers of the U.S. Congress, including the ability to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, and this grants Congress the power to set tariffs. And again, as you know, it's a form of tax on imported goods. And additionally, Congress has the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations. Now, you may say to yourself, what happened? Well, Congress, as you probably understand, is dysfunctional in many respects. And Congress gave away a lot of its powers in the 1960s and 70s, and they weren't supposed to be appropriated permanently by the executive branch of government, but it looks like they have. And I'm going to talk about the basis of using taxes according to the Trump administration. Next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. Thank you. Okay. President Trump's tariffs. Go back one slide, please. Yeah, legal basis for, yeah, go President Trump's 2025 tariffs. What did he do? Well, he imposed additional duties on China, the European Union, Mexico, and others. And he's also targeted all kinds of things, including electric vehicles. Biden put 100% duty on electric vehicles. Again, Elon Musk, where did he make his money? Electric vehicles. What was the United States supposed to be doing in terms of transportation? It was supposed to be creating electric vehicles. China is doing very, very well with electric vehicles. Many of you may know about a Chinese car. The brand is BYD, and the car sells for about 30,000 US dollars. It's a wonderful car. About 25% of all cars in Europe, cars on the road, are BYD. They're Chinese made. But virtually nobody in the United States has a BYD electric car. Why? Because the duty rate is 100% ad valorem. So if you're bringing in a $30,000 car, the car's price to the consumer is going to be $60,000. So again, Trump says he wants to basically reposition America. He wants to bring manufacturing back. Again, what business wants is certainty, and if these tariffs are up in the air, I don't know how business is going to relocate here. Tariffs, our position is protective. And Trump also says that the United States has been on the receiving end of unfair treatment, that the rest of the world is taking advantage of the US. Well, you have to understand that these free trade agreements were negotiated by the US. Trump has also changed his position with respect to Canada and Mexico. Some of you may remember NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Well, it's changed. It's now NAFTA 2.0, and it has to do with the US, Canada, Mexico agreement. Actually, in those countries, some of them are not coming in. And as I mentioned before, there's also something called, again, national emergencies and national security. The president is relying upon the term national security to justify the imposition of a lot of these tariffs. The term national security, well, it's ambiguous. And we're going to talk a little bit about that now. Next slide, please. Legal basis for Trump's tariffs. Some of you may have heard about something called Section 201, and that's when domestic industries ask for import relief. They believe that their industries are going to be harmed, irreparably harmed. They could, serious. There's again, case for serious damage. And it is something called the Section 232 or National Security Act, and that's what Trump largely relies upon. But even more so, he's been relying on Section 301, and that has to do with unfair trade practices. Administration relies most heavily on something called the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, the IEPA. And again, economic threats constitute declared national emergencies, according to the Trump administration. Well, right now I'd like to speak a little bit about 201, and then we'll move on to 232, another act. Section 201 refers to Section 201 of the Trade Act of 1974, and that allows domestic industries to petition for what's known as import relief. And again, if industries believe they're facing serious injury because of increased imports, they can ask the government for safeguard mechanisms. That is to restrict items coming into the United States. They may apply tariffs to them, or they may just say, oh, listen, only a certain number of these items can come into the United States. Section 201 is supposed to be temporary in nature. The relief that these industries, that American industries get, is supposed to be temporary relief. Again, the industries have to show that they're going to be seriously injured or threatened with serious injury because of these increased imports. The president will decide based upon reports that he gets from the United States International Trade Commission. And again, there may be relief measures in place, and again, there could be increased tariffs, or there may be quotas of certain sort, only so many goods can come in. And it's been used for quite a while right now, and the president does use this. If you want to know about certain items that have been subject to Section 201, it has to do with crystalline silicon photovoltaic cells, basically modules that are coming in. Large residential washing machines. Whirlpool had a tough time. The Whirlpool could not bring in these large, washing machines, and it caused a lot of trouble for the company. And I had a friend of mine very much involved with that. Also, another type item that's been affected by the Section 201 tariffs have been staple fibers, basically goods that go into or materials that go into the manufacture of wearing apparel, textiles. Now, there's another type of act. It's called Section 232, and that empowers the President of the United States to impose trade sanctions such as tariffs. And again, President Trump is saying, I can do these things, I can impose tariffs because our national security is imperiled, it's in danger. And Trump thinks national security is in trouble because of Mexicans walking over the border or coming in, without papers, undocumented. He also claims that there's a national emergency or national security is being threatened because of fentanyl. And we have what's known as trafficking duties, and that's going to be applied to countries that Trump claims is responsible for the increase in in um, in drugs coming into the country. Now, it's very difficult for customs to find fentanyl. We know that. But again, stating that there's a national emergency because of these things, I don't know. And the courts don't think there is either. And we're going to talk about a couple of court cases where the courts say there really isn't a basis for claiming national security problems or threat to national security. National security is the term has never been defined by the U.S. government. That's one of the things. It's a very ambiguous term. And again, if you think about examples of past and current uses of the Section 232, it's steel and aluminum products. There are big tariffs on that. And there's a lot of ongoing investigations right now at the present time affecting copper, timber, and lumber. Okay, and also pharmaceuticals. Next slide, please. Okay, we have U.S. Yoshida International. Some of you, I doubt it, but some of you may have heard about this case. Very interesting case, happened a while ago, and went before the courts. The courts at this time, this is back when Nixon was president, and the court said there should be basically limited authority, limited ability of the executive to impose tariffs. And again, Nixon had done quite a lot, with respect to tariffs. And the court said, yes, they can be imposed by the executive branch, but again, it should be temporary and it should not give the president unlimited authority. Next slide, please. Okay, U.S. Court of International Trade rulings on tariffs. Some of you may have heard that the Court of International Trade, the old Customs Court, has looked at some of Donald Trump's tariffs, and they said, no, you've gone too far. That again, your claim of national security really doesn't hold water. That Mexicans walking across the border or on the northern border, it could be people coming in from Canada, does not constitute a national emergency. You're declaring it so, but it's not really. So the court right now has ruled that a lot of Trump's tariffs, especially under one known as IEPA, is basically wrong. It's misplaced, that it should not be permanent and Trump should not be using tariffs the way he's using. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. Anticipated tariffs. What's going to happen in the very near future? Well, we know that there's an ongoing trade war with China, and that's been in place for a long time. The United States has China in its sights right now. And again, there's electronic vehicles that are being targeted by the United States. There's also semiconductors, and you've got steel, as I mentioned, and that's actually lithium batteries as well. What can we expect after July of 2025? We can expect, again, maybe some pushback from the European Union. And there is going to be high rates of duty on many items coming in from the EU. Mexico and Canada, well, they have problems with this right now. If you've been looking at the news, you know that a lot of Canadians and even a lot of Mexicans are not coming into the United States. They don't want to be here now. They're boycotting. Now, I'd like to say a few things, and then with regard, I'm going to give you a summary of what I think is going to happen, and then I'd like to take some questions from you. As far as what's likely to happen, there's going to be increased prices and inflation. That's what happens when you increase tariff rates. And tariffs are a tax, as I've said, on imports. And businesses importing goods subject to tariffs will likely pass these costs on to the consumer. And again, that's going to be in the way of higher prices. And higher costs across various categories, well, Americans can anticipate paying more for groceries and clothing and household items, auto parts, and recreational goods. And I can give some examples with respect to these higher costs. They're going to affect such items as PlayStation 5, and it could possibly double that price, and maybe goods coming in from Mexico, like SUVs. You're going to see significant pricing hikes there. Then there's inflationary effects. Experts, including Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, he's been in the news lately, anticipate that the new tariffs will contribute to higher inflation. And that's something that people should be aware of. Overall costs to households, and this is kind of disturbing. This is out of Yale University. There's something called the Budget Lab. And the Budget Lab estimates that these tariffs could raise prices by 2.3 percentage points. And again, it could cost the average family in the United States more than $3,800 annually. Okay, impact on specific goods, as I mentioned, groceries is a big one. Since the U.S. relies on imports for a significant portion of the food supply in the United States, and it's really true, and it's increasing. Matter of fact, 55% of all the fresh fruit in the United States is imported. 32% of all fresh vegetables, and when it comes to seafood, 94% of all seafood is imported. And you're going to see prices hiked on those items. Electronics, going to be price hikes there. So expect to pay more for your iPhones, your iPads, and laptops. And when it comes to cars, I mentioned before that the Biden administration as well did not like the idea of electric vehicles being imported into the U.S. And the tariff on that has been increased to 100% by the Trump administration. And imported cars and U.S. assembled vehicles, well, if you're going to import those, they're going to be sold here in the United States. There's going to be big price hikes on those items. Now, when it comes to low-income households in the United States, they're going to get hit hard, and they're going to spend a large portion of their income on these items. And again, this has to do with the Yale budget. The Yale budget estimates that lower earning households are going to spend perhaps up to 4% of the income that they receive on these price hikes on these imported goods. And again, there may be a possible decline in the quality of goods that are being brought into the United States. Sometimes you see that in terms of groceries. You'll find a lot of inferior foods today. That's because companies are substituting. They're trying to find cheaper product to sell people. And again, when it comes to the thoughts about the economy, consumer outlook, well, again, there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and there's going to be, in the eyes of many people, an economic slowdown. Matter of fact, a lot of people have said already that it's here. And the Yale Budget Lab, and there's something, go online, look them up, estimates a potential of maybe a 4% shrinkage of the United States economy. So what we're facing is serious times and serious events right now. So I ask you to pay attention to July 8th. We're going to find out a lot more then when it comes to what's going to happen. And if you have any questions right now, I'd like to take those. I think I went a little over. I'm sorry, but it's a big topic. We could spend hours and hours on this stuff, but I'm very happy that you're here and you're listening. And if you have any questions, please direct them to me. And if I don't have the answers for you, I'll get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin. Such an informative session. Guests, we hope the information has been helpful in giving you a clear understanding of the current affairs of tariffs in the U.S. As Martin said, we'd love to hear from you. We're now opening the floor for a Q&A session. Please drop your questions in the chat or utilize the raised hand feature if you'd like to speak, and we will call on you. The floor is open. We will give opportunity for questions.
Yeah.
Please do not hesitate to ask. Martin is a wealth of knowledge, and he's more than excited to help answer your questions.
That's true. Any kind of question, I'll try to address and give you a satisfactory answer. And if I don't have it right now, I'll get back to you. Well, I'll tell you what, in the meantime, let me just go over a little bit with respect to tariffs that are under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. It's called IEPA. And this is what President Trump is largely relying upon. And it's a broad interpretation of this act. Trump says that it allows him to regulate importations. Now, as you've learned, who's supposed to be regulating imports? It's supposed to be Congress. But Congress has been dysfunctional for quite a while, and Trump made a power grab. The executive branch of government is now claiming that it is in control of the importation process. Again, you have agencies like Customs has import jurisdiction and other agencies, but Trump is now stating that, hey, I'm it, not Congress. And to justify, um, again, his tariffs, he's relying upon this act called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. He's claiming that there's a national emergency, that because people are walking over the border, because the United States has problems with drugs, that he can impose these tariffs. And the courts are looking at this right now. The courts disagree with this interpretation. He's basically claiming unbounded authority. And again, he's imposing what's known as trafficking tariffs. That is, tariffs are being imposed on countries like Canada and Mexico because of fentanyl. That's not what the act was designed for, but nonetheless, he claims it is so, and he can go ahead. Again, with the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, it was originally used for sanctions. It had nothing to do with tariffs, but this is the act that's now being used by the president. Appeals are pending. Many courts have ruled against the Trump administration, and we're going to find out shortly what's going on with respect to the claims that he's making with respect to the acts that I've mentioned. So
Martin,
the tariffs are in place right now, and we'll see on July 8th. That's when the world changes again.
Martin, we do have a raised hand from Mansi Parikh.
Yeah, let me
Mansi
see.
Parikh, please unmute and ask your question.
Okay, great. Let me just see. If you could just read me the question, I'm having problems seeing it here.
Mansi Parikh will unmute and ask the question. Please go ahead and unmute
Sure.
and ask your question.
Okay, go ahead, please. The question is?
They may be having some challenges unmuting.
Yeah, I'm having difficulty finding this. Let me see. Question and answer. Okay. Do you think food can be excluded? There are certain exclusions. Trump has made exclusions for machinery. As far as food goes, I think he may need to. When people go to Walmart and Costco in the very near future, they're going to be frightened, they're going to be upset. So you may see some exclusions to certain food items and also such things as even like diapers and infant formula and so on. Very important to people. And if they see what the price hikes are going to be, um, once they experience and once they realize what they are, I think there could be a lot of outrage in the United States. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's certain exclusions. But right now, the United States is importing more fruits and vegetables, more food than ever before. So there may be exclusions. It's happened. It's happened. But again, we don't know. Right now, these items are not excluded.
Thank you so much for your question, Monty. Hope that answered. Hope you got the answer you needed. Um, it appears that we may have to put the questions in the chat box. So please type your questions in the chat box, and we will be sure to answer if you have any other question.
Yeah, please.
Martin, perhaps you can share with them the upcoming information about the import-export agent training that will be coming up soon.
Yeah, again, I'm very thankful that I'm affiliated with NJCU, and what I do, at the university is I provide a course, and it's about importing and exporting. And if you don't know anything about importing or exporting, that's okay. You can be a newbie, and we've really combined two different courses. One is called Import Regulations and Documentation, and the other one is Export Regulations and Documentation. And what we do is we address both areas, in a nuts and bolts type of fashion. Not a lot of philosophy is going to be imparted, but we do go over a lot of forms, and I do explain the importing procedure and the exporting procedure so that people can understand what's going on. This stuff is not rocket science. Most people have trouble understanding these areas just because they don't know where to get the information about these subjects. And what I'm going to provide to the students is a lot of information. You're going to have a big electronic library. You're also going to receive an electronic book when it comes to importing and one with respect to exporting. You're going to get to know fellow students. I'm going to present to you, as I mentioned, the nuts and bolts. When it comes to importing, you're going to find out, what is a power of attorney, a customs power of attorney? What's a 301 form? What's a bond? We're going to find out about the major accounting document for customs, the 7501. You learn about invoices, and you're going to learn about the pitfalls of importing. As I mentioned, the biggest problem for importers happens to be marking. A lot of the goods that come into the United States are not marked correctly, and that can cause problems. Fortunately, you're going to be put on notice about this beforehand, and you're not going to make a lot of mistakes. I also provide a lot of checklists. I give overviews with, in great detail with respect to the different officers in customs, entry officers, import specialists, the men and women in the blue uniforms, basically field officers, what to expect if you're coming into an airport from overseas or a terminal. What is customs interested in? Customs is interested in you making a declaration, you declaring what you have on your person. You're going to find out if you're lucky enough to have $10,000 on you, you have to declare it, or you have to fill out a form if you're asked by a customs officer. And again, the whole idea is how to avoid problems with customs. Customs is getting a lot feistier right now. You're also going to learn that if you're a businessman or businesswoman, that you may want to leave your laptop home or your portable phone. Why? Because customs can look into that. You're going to find out that in most respects, the Constitution is not applicable at the border. And you're going to find out, again, how to keep things um, basically simple and how to comply with regulations. You're going to learn about what's known as reasonable care. You're going to learn where to go for information, free resources, and free is good. The other side of the house, we're going to address exporting, and anybody can be an exporter. You don't need a license. The same thing with being an importer. You don't need a license. Some of the items that you import or export may require licenses. When it comes to exporting, however, fewer than, say, 2% of all items require a license. And why is that? Well, because maybe they're going to the right country or they're made of the right stuff. But you got to be careful today. There's a lot of countries that are off limits, and you don't want to get in trouble by sending an item to the wrong country or the wrong person. You're going to learn about bad guy lists, where they are and what they do and what they're about. You're going to learn about importing. You're going to learn about, you're going to learn about exporting classification. The same thing with importing. You have to learn how to classify. I mentioned two big concepts, value and classification. Same thing too with exporting. And you're going to learn about basic export documents. You're going to learn how to file. You have to file an electronic export invoice with the government. But this can be done for free. You can save yourself a lot of money. I can show you how to take an online test, and you won't have to pay ocean forwarders to do this for you. You're going to learn about all kinds of documentation. We're going to talk about all kinds of issues, affecting exports as well. You're going to learn about some electronic tools that you can use. And you're going to learn that there's a lot out there that's free. And you'll be receiving publications, just like with importing, for exporting as well. You're going to have a big library, and I will continue to be available to you if you have any questions about importing or exporting. And you'll have a
Thank
lot of
you.
fun, and there's no stress.
Thank you so much, Martin. That class, the Import-Export Agent Training class, runs October 6th through November 19th on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. And enrollment is open right now. You can use the QR code that's on the screen or click the link that's in the chat for the full program details. We welcome you to enroll today. I see another question about the freight broker exam course. Yes, we do offer a freight broker agent training course. It's available online. It's self-paced, on demand, ready whenever you're ready to start. All you need to do is visit our website, www.njcu.edu/cont-ed, and you will click on the career training programs to view the information on the freight broker agent training. That course is available, as I said, it's self-paced, it's on demand, and you can enroll as early as today. So please go for it. Martin, thank you so much for all of your expertise on tariffs, on the international trade business, and on the import-export training program that will be coming up soon. We welcome everyone to please engage with us. We're available via email or online. Martin's contact information will be posted in the chat very soon. Please feel free to email him. He is always, like I said, a wealth of resource to answer your questions. We do have a couple more matters before we wrap up today. We want
Yes.
to announce to everyone that NJCU students can begin their journey in international trade through our non-credit certificate programs, gaining practical skills and industry-recognized credentials, launching their careers within just a few short months. You can transition into our bachelor's program while completing your degree. Students may also enter directly into the bachelor's program and enhance their education and employability by enrolling in non-credit certificate programs. NJCU awards academic credit for prior learning, so none of your learning is lost, including select certifications and relevant work experience, helping students accelerate their path to graduation. For more details on our non-credit offerings, simply click the link in the chat to access our website and view our offerings. We have a final word from the NJSBDC. Madeline Thompson, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Martin, for that amazing webinar. I learned a lot. I love all the history of this stuff, so it was really great to hear you talk about all that. So everyone, just another round of applause for him. Thank you. Thank you, Teo, and the NJCU team for allowing us to partner with you. This has been a great opportunity, and we're so excited to see what we can do next. I'm here to talk about what NJSBDC at NJCU is doing next. We have a series called First Fridays, which is the first Friday of every month. We provide a financial webinar for free for our clients and the general businesses in New Jersey. Our upcoming one is on July 11th. You can sign up for that in this link that Zena sent. It is going to be on the basics of financing your business. We are partnering with UC EDC and HC EDC, and they will be presenting on where to get finances, how to manage your finances, all those fun things that any business really needs to know how to do. So please, please, please sign up for that webinar. The registration link is in the chat. We hope to see you there. And please follow us on social media to stay up to date on all of our upcoming events. That's where we post about them. We'd love to see you at our next one. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Madeline. SBDC is available to hold your hands through your process of building your business. So please take advantage. It's a community opportunity and resource that's honestly not declared enough. So please take the opportunity and utilize what they have to offer. Just a couple of final announcements as we wrap up. We truly have valued your thoughts and your questions during this webinar. We want to hear more from you, and we hope that you will engage us by clicking on the link that's going to be showing up on the screen and just giving us your feedback on today's webinar. Utilize the QR code or the link. Both are available and will point you directly into the feedback form. You'll also receive an email with a survey link along with the recording of today's webinar, so you can revisit key points or share with others. Please feel free to share your constructive thoughts. We're listening, and we're happy to mold as accordingly. You can also connect with us on our social platforms. We look forward to engaging with you, whether on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're all we're on all platforms. Finally, we are so grateful that you joined us today. Professor Martin K. Baird, thank you for delivering such an informative and engaging session. The New Jersey Small Business Development Center, thank you for your amazing partnership and for joining us today as well. And we appreciate the time of everyone here. Thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you again, and have a great day, everyone.